Well, it's a funny thing because for a while I was known as a writer of choral music, and it's funny how people pick up on what you're doing. But if you, I mean, I just write to commission, that's my income, my job. So you do tend to wander down certain paths and do a lot of a certain thing. Like I've done rather a lot of organ music lately. But I've written a lot of choral music. I was in the BBC Singers for 12 years, so at that time I was writing for a lot of choirs. But before that, for say when I was in my 20s, I didn't really write any choral music at all. I was writing chamber music. And so people tend to sort of lock in on whatever you're doing at the moment, and different people, different performers have a different idea of what it is you write because they have a rather tunnel visioned kind of view of it. So, I mean, I have really done everything from brass bands to orchestras to guitar pieces to everything, you know. And I think of myself as an all-rounder, but if you ask other people, they might say, oh no, she writes choral music, doesn't she, you know, whatever. Well, the church organ is a brilliant thing to have when you're writing church music because it's such an incredibly versatile instrument. One of the things that I always tell young composers is that in this country we have a plethora of brilliant players in churches, and they tend to be rather modest people, church organists, but I think they're the greatest virtuosos that we have. There's some phenomenal players, and one of the things you can do, because when you write church music you're often asked to write something that's fairly easy and performable, something that can be put together on 15 minutes rehearsal, is to make the choral parts relatively easy and then put a lot of elaboration, a lot of harmonic diversity into the organ part. And that's one of the sort of basic tricks of writing church music, that you can make it sound as if the choir is singing a more complicated thing than it actually is singing. And I just love the organ because you can do everything with it, from just make it like a filler in the background to being something that completely overwhelms everything else. And there's not many things that can do that. Virtually no instrument has that sort of range. I mean, I'd say maybe the French horn. If you have a quartet of horns, they can be incredibly quiet and just like a little murmur, or they can be louder than anything in the orchestra. But there's very few things that can do it, and the organ it's wonderful like that. So you can have huge theatrical moments in church with the organ, but it can also be something very contemplative. So, I mean, to me, it's vital, and I love writing for it. I don't sing anymore, but I used to do lots and lots of church work right from when I was in my 20s, freelance church work, and right up until I was sort of 50, you know. And well, for a start, I love being with singers because they're very gregarious, they're very outgoing. And also, there's something about being a singer. It's a very vulnerable thing in many ways. It's just you and your voice, you know. You don't have an instrument between you and the audience. And there's something quite vulnerable about putting yourself out there as a singer. And I always kind of admire and value what singers do. And I think it's really affected me as a composer because, I mean, I've sung, you know, in various choirs since I was a child. And I think in breath lengths. I think it's why brass players often appreciate what I do, because I write very much in breath lengths, and I write well for instruments that have to think in breaths. I think, you know, breath really informs everything I do as a writer. I write in breath lengths. I know I do that all the time. I find it very difficult to write something which you wouldn't be able to sing in one breath. And that's really just quite unconscious with me. And I think breath really informs the drama of a piece. You can use breath in a very theatrical and dramatic way. I mean, you just only have to think of opera to think how, you know, those great long breath lengths, but then also the way a breath is used to actually, as a punctuation mark, like an exclamation mark or a question mark. It's very much about breath. I think it informs everything. Yeah, they got in touch with me, the Choirbook people, and said, you know, would I like to do something for the Choirbook? And then they asked me if there was any particular text I'd like to set. And I thought of Corpus Christi immediately, because that's something that I've always thought I'd love an opportunity to do that. It's a very beautiful text, and it's a standard text. A lot of people have set it, but I've always really liked it. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to do that. once I'd started it, I realised it was actually quite hard to do, because as a singer I kept thinking of the sort of famous settings, the Britain and the Warlock, which I've sung loads and loads of times, and I found the first week of composing was about trying to forget those pieces. And in the end I thought, I'm just thinking about it all wrong, and I went right back to the beginning and rethought the text again and got completely away from that whole very kind of nostalgic English, lovely medieval kind of rhythms and all that sort of thing. And I tried to sort of get really away from that. So it's very much a piece, I know it sounds really weird, but it's very much a piece about weather, about English weather. It's like it starts off on a kind of beautiful fresh spring day with this image of orchards. And then gradually it's like the clouds come over and something rather strange and mysterious happens. And the colour, the music continues very much in the same rhythmic patterns all the time, but the colour of the harmonies change and it becomes darker and stranger as the words do. So I really sort of approached it from the other side of the text, and so as not to just end up sounding like Benjamin Britten. I'm delighted to be writing for the cathedral. I went there for the first time about a year ago, and it was great. I was really surprised at the depth of history that's there. It was interesting. So I'm really thrilled that they're going to have the premiere of the piece, and it's brilliant. The whole Choirbook project, brilliant way of bringing together a fantastic array of British composers.